Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Films and Stuff. I am the appropriately named Ethan. I'm joined by Pete. Big day today. What is it?
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to talk about Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, Part 1.
A lot of punctuation.
Oh
Mission,
God.
it's actually Mission: Impossible Dead Reckoning, Part 1. Part 1, I think, should be in parentheses just to maximize it, but
Yeah,
anyway.
and maybe put an umlaut or two in there.
All right. So this is the 7th Mission Impossible installment, right? And last week we went through MI1, MI2, MI3, and then the last 3 where we saw that Mission Impossible really gained its legs and became known as kind of like an action, like a real action franchise, Tom Cruise's flagship. Tell me about the build up to this. I think we've both been looking forward to it for a long time, right?
To put things in context for the listeners, this is the second summer in a row where Tom Cruise has put himself in a position to save Hollywood's box office. Last year was really the first summer where people were finally getting out of their houses, out of pandemic mode, into the cinemas.
Right.
And Top Gun Maverick really led the vanguard to say, hey, cinema's back, baby.
That's right.
I would not have said the same for this summer, except for the fact that this summer has been such a... This is going to sound harsher than what I'm saying, but it's been a colossal disappointment. And I don't mean that ultra harshly, but the reality is that none of the movies have performed as well as anyone would have hoped they have, with the exception of maybe Guardians. Every movie has been a box office. I don't want to call it a flop, but for all intents and purposes, flops, right? Very few of them have been profitable. I expect that 2, maybe 3 of them will be profitable. Given the budget that this movie had, I'm skeptical that this movie is going to be that kind of profitable, but to be determined, really.
Our expectations this summer were super high.
Yeah.
Because there were a lot of big names. Indiana Jones, which we reviewed and weren't terribly impressed by, is a big name. Fast and Furious, which we reviewed and weren't terribly impressed by, is a very big name. Guardians is a big name. Transformers is a big name. I think our expectations were super high, and I'm going to say it, except for Mission Impossible, my expectations have not been met. But here it is. I really enjoyed Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. Tell me what you think first, because I think that we're a little bit different in how we walked out of the cinema after having seen this.
Yeah. So in fact, I messaged you as I was walking down the steps, the ramp from my seat.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes, this is a good movie. It is
a good movie.
What you would qualify as the quintessential summer film.
It is.
Right? It's got lots of action.
Yeah.
A lot of it brainless, a little bit of intelligence, a little bit of suspense, although maybe not as much as I was hoping. A beautiful cast, literally. I mean, some of the most stunning people in Hollywood working there. Yeah. A very well-rounded cast.
Yeah.
And you get to see everyone flex a little bit of their muscles, with maybe the exception of Ving Rhames, who is kind of just there.
And Benji.
Yeah, so in general, I thought it was good. I just didn't think it was unbelievable. Like how I walked out of Maverick, I did not feel the same way walking out of Part 1. I will say, and I did mention this to you yesterday, of the 3 movies this summer that are effectively Part 1s of 2s, this was by far the best.
That's absolutely true.
That includes Across the Spider-Verse, which it would have been the best had they told us in the title this is a part 1 of 2. So really, that was Sony shooting themselves in the foot.
I think Mission Impossible, a lot of spoiler alerts here, so we'll give that caveat at the beginning.
Yeah.
I thought the story, and I say story as opposed to plot, and I'll go into why.
Yeah.
I thought the story was fantastic.
Yes.
You and I have seen so many movies where there's one evil person, there's one nameless, faceless, borderless cabal. We've seen all of that.
Yeah.
And to be honest, those films have a very weak story. I don't feel a sense of urgency, but you're supposed to make up for that pretty weak story by the characters, by the action, by the scenes, and you're kind of supposed to be mystified by a pretty weak plot about someone wanting to release some type of chemical, get a nuclear weapon, launch this, destroy that you're kind of uninspired, but the movie is so good that you kind of forget about the fact that the plot's a little bit weak. Here, I thought the story is fantastic. It's very, very timely. I mean, the news is awash in everything that's AI. We're surrounded by different uses for ChatGPT, for example. Artificial intelligence is super hot. There's begun to be a number of documentaries and stories and articles about how can it take over? Is it going to take our jobs? Is it going to turn on us? Is it going to this or that? Based on that, I thought this story was very, very timely, very similar to kind of Terminator. I think it's going to be a timeless story, actually, and maybe even prescient. And I think we'll look back at this in 10 years, and it's still going to be a timeless story that we look back on and be like, wow, they were really spot on, or oh, they were really off. The story I 100% got behind. The part 1 I thought was a genuine cliffhanger. I really liked it. Tom Cruise and the stunts and everything I thought was great. The weakness, first of all, the MacGuffin, the key, there was way too much. It's in my pocket. It's in your pocket. Wait a second, you had it. I had it. Who had it? I dropped it. Pick it up. Way too much of that for a Mission Impossible film. And then I would say the second weakness is that the IMF team doesn't really have the same kind of like spark that it used to.
Totally.
Benji Dunn, right? Used to be really a little bit buffoonish, and that was his charm, right? Ving Rhames has been there for all of them, and I just felt like that team is a little bit stale. So I thought that the inclusion of Haley Atwell, who's fantastic, I thought was a very good addition to add some spice to that team.
So let's take a quick step back, if you don't mind. I agree with what you're saying, and we'll get to that. But so I think what Ethan has done, he's raised a very, very important point that I don't want to gloss over because it's really that important. The first thing is there is a distinction between the story and the plot. The plot really is about a specific movie, right? It tells you what's going to happen in the movie and what the premise is of the movie. Whereas the story is more generalized. Think of it almost like a theme, which tells you what the movie is going to be about or what topics it covers.
Right.
In that regard, I mean, they've been making this movie for 4+ years now. Kudos to them for calling it out well in advance, right? Because even 5 years ago, when this movie was probably first written, AI in the real world wasn't a thing, right? It was this nebulous thing that everyone talked about that was limited to like research and like deep learning algorithms and things that, you know, people in lab coats were worrying about or working on in some nebulous data center that we'd never really think about. Fast forward to 2022/2023, ChatGPT is a real thing. People can access it from their web browsers. They can ask it questions. It's learning. It's a thing that the average Joe can interact with. And
hold on. I just want to make one point. That's a fantastic point. That they really had a lot of foresight. Like you said, they made this movie 4 years ago. They wrote the script 4+ years ago.
Yeah.
For them to have made something about this is actually even more remarkable when you think about it.
And they avoided the tropes that, because we've seen rogue AI elements in other movies before, but they avoided the tropes of it going too far, right?
Right.
The most classic example is probably Terminator, where Skynet rises, and immediately the first thing that they do with Skynet is that, they want to destroy all humans.
Right.
And I'm not saying that's not going to happen with ChatGPT and so forth, but it doesn't happen like an instant switch. We've seen that with iRobot. We've seen that with all these other movies where the instinct is to show you that the worst case scenario happen immediately. Whereas in this case, the frank reality is that if an AI like this happens, the governments of the world are going to do their best to try to rein it in. And not because they see this as an existential threat to humanity. No, but because they're going to want to use this for themselves. They're going to want to exploit this so that they can maintain their superior power.
Right.
Kudos to the writers for not just being able to predict the future, and I'm not saying they have, but at the same time, reining their baser instincts to not go too far with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the first thing.
Can I ask a question about the plot, though? There's something that I kind of missed. So I thought the opening scene was a very good scene to kind of like grab your attention and not right away dive into, I guess the impulse is to show Tom Cruise doing something crazy, right? We've seen him like mountain climbing. We've seen him, when he was strapped to the jet. They didn't kind of like use up all their goodwill right away with Tom Cruise. They got away from the IMF entirely and showed something. So I understand that the AI was, at the time when I watched the movie, I thought it was a Russian AI that was kind of housed in this globe, and that it was somehow like self-preserving itself. And it knew that if it was able to basically be left alone at the bottom of the Arctic, it would be safe. It was trying to protect itself, essentially, right? Okay. But then later on in the movie, one of the like American generals or military dudes kind of indicated that they actually like released a virus on the Russian sub.
Yes.
And I didn't understand how that worked. Did you pick that up?
Yeah. So this is going to be my interpretation from having only seen this movie once.
Yeah.
Okay. And my initial reaction was the Russians had developed this AI for military purposes. It wasn't an AI in the sense that, it was planned to dominate the world. It was more for how do we make ourselves undetectable as a submarine?
Right.
Right. And that was why it was kind of testing itself. They made that point that we've experienced close encounters with every sub from every nation, and they haven't been able to detect us. Our computer system is working.
Right. I got that.
Yeah. So that was the first step.
Okay.
I took that to mean that the Americans were actually aware of this sub and of this software.
Okay.
And to disable that or to kind of infiltrate that, they wanted to upload their virus into this software. This is similar to what they didn't do it this far with the Hunt for Red October, but the idea was they wanted to be able to track this thing without the Russians knowing that they were being tracked. Right? So, and that's the same thing that happens in the Hunt for Red October. The guy who's got the earphones is able to figure out the pattern that there's definitely something going on here, but they don't tell anyone. And by uploading this virus, they inadvertently created the AI or made the AI like self-aware.
Got it.
That was my take.
Yeah, and obviously they don't go into detail how you can upload something without direct access.
No, because why would they? That's just a conceit of the movie, right? Because I'm going to get into that as well. That's one of my questions is that, we'll get there. Yeah. I have lots of problems with this, by the way.
Okay. So that's the opening, and I liked the opening. I thought that was a good scene setter.
I really liked the fact that when we see Ethan Hunt for the first time, he's in his downtime between missions and
Yep.
he's not doing anything crazy. Just like you said, he's not rock
Yep.
climbing like he was in Mission
Yep.
Impossible 2. He's
Yep.
not sitting in a jail cell like he was in Ghost
Yeah.
Nation,
Right.
right? He's sitting in the shadows and he's basically seeing this guy as a new recruit and kind of
Right.
like mentoring this new recruit for the IMF.
That's right.
So I thought that was great. Let's talk about the premise just quickly so that everyone's on the same page. I mean, again, spoiler alert. Theoretically, you will have seen this movie if you're listening to this podcast. But if you're not interested in watching this movie, let us at least walk you through it.
Yeah.
The Russians have somehow created this artificial intelligence. The artificial intelligence, in a bid to preserve itself, destroys the submarine that it's housed in, or what we learn is the source code is housed in.
Right.
We learn that to access it, you need two keys, right? That form one key, this cruciform.
Which is a very cool concept. And I'm sure you're going to come back and say, come on, there's got to be a way that you can open this door without a key.
Sure. But again,
Right.
that's the conceit of these movies. I'm with it. It's a MacGuffin. And
Right.
what they did was they
Right.
split the MacGuffin in two, which is fine. I actually thought that the first part of the key would be the first movie and the second part of the key would be the second movie, but that's not the case.
That's a pretty good idea, by the way.
Ethan Hunt is called into the IMF by his good old friend Kitteridge, who
Yeah.
we haven't seen since the first movie.
Yeah, I know.
And let me just tell you, this is the advantage to not seeing any of the reviews, not seeing any of the trailers. I saw him in the cinema and my mind was blown.
Yeah, that was cool.
I was so happy to see him come back. Fine, we have Kitteridge come back. He tells Ethan he needs to go on the hunt to find these keys. Ilsa Faust, Rebecca Ferguson, who we all love, has the first key. She's somewhere in the Arabian desert near Yemen. He goes in, saves Ilsa from a firefight, finds the key, and of course, she becomes a part of the squad.
Did you like that scene? And did you like that plot device?
I thought it was fine. I thought it was really understated and low key for a Mission Impossible movie.
Yeah.
I think this is the other problem I have with Mission Impossible movies now, is that the last couple of movies have raised the stakes in terms of physicality so much that a simple desert sandstorm battle sequence is exactly that now. Simple. It just seems so mundane. At no point did I think either of them were going to die.
Yeah. I found it to be, again, this is why I said I like the story, not love the plot. There's so many assumptions you have to make here. And this is what we do. I mean, this is why we have a podcast, is so we can go into those details, right? But the sub exploded. 2 Russians are wearing the keys around their neck. They float to the surface. Someone finds them. Someone takes the 2 keys. Big gap. Somehow Ilsa gets one of the keys and she promptly goes to some, I don't know, not even like just like some small columns in the middle of the desert, right?
Yeah.
Like that's her hideout strategy with one very cool, high-powered sniper rifle, right?
Yeah.
Like that whole thing to me, that's clearly a set piece, but just logically, it doesn't make any sense how she
Not
got
at all.
there.
Not
right?
at all.
It's stupid.
I get that Kitteridge just put a bounty of $50 million on her head, but that's still not the place to hide out.
Like not tactically, not for any reason does that make sense. I mean, there's no groceries, there's no water. You're going to bring everything there. What's your plan? You're just going to sit there? I mean, it doesn't make any sense, to be honest. I thought that was really silly. It was, as a set piece, it wasn't so bad. It's not memorable. We're going to forget about it. But I thought just logically, that was really didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I digress.
No, that's good. Then we are immediately transported to Abu Dhabi International Airport, where we have the entire squad assembled, minus Ilsa, because at this stage, Ilsa is considered dead, even though she's not.
Right.
Because Ethan is trying to protect her.
Yep.
They've learned that the buyer was going to be there. He presumably had the second key, and Ethan was going to sell him his key and then follow the buyer to find out who the ultimate buyer is, because presumably the ultimate buyer knows what the key unlocks. And that's the other part of this mystery, is that the audience knows what the key unlocks, but the people in the movie have no idea what it unlocks and what the key actually does.
I thought that made a lot of sense. And that was very Mission Impossible-y, right? Which is, I'm not going to take their key. And I don't believe that they even have the original key. That would be stupid. So I'm actually going to sell them our half. I'm going to follow them. That's a very, very well thought out Mission Impossible
Exactly,
device.
because first of all, practical. You can't assume that you know all the information available.
Right.
And also, it ups the stakes, because the one bargaining chip you have, you're kind of giving away.
That's right.
So I like that. Fine. No issues there. And while they're at the airport, the mission looks like it's going to go off without a hitch until a wrench is thrown in the cogs. And that wrench is Haley Atwell's character, Grace.
And the bomb.
Oh, and the bomb. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I guess Gabriel. But so Grace is this like
three wrenches. So 3 wrenches if you're counting at home.
Sure. Grace is this master thief / criminal / whatever.
Yeah.
She's been hired by some unknown benefactor at this point, which
she's Matt Damon in the Ocean series, right? She's the pickpocket.
Yes, in terms of role. Yeah. So she's been hired to pick this guy's pocket and take this key. And in return, she'll get a couple $1 million in crypto. That's the idea.
Right.
And by the way, yet once again, another movie in Hollywood going out of their way to show you that crypto is only used for illegal stuff.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And hold on, she's hired by the White Widow, right?
Yes, she is.
Okay, got it. So she's hired by the White Widow.
But she doesn't know it at this point. She was hired by a faceless, nameless person.
That's right.
The promise of money was good enough. So she gets in here, she steals the key. And of course, hijinks ensue, because while Ethan is here trying to finish his mission, the IMF thinks that he's gone rogue and has sent their own squad of people to chase after Ethan.
Right.
And then at the same time, so actually there's a couple of wrenches in the cogs, not just 3.
4 wrenches. 4 wrenches.
Right? Let's just throw the whole damn toolbox in this in these cogs.
Lot of wrenches.
So you've got IMF agents chasing after Ethan. You've got Ethan trying to chase after Grace, who's now picked his pocket and has picked the pocket of the buyer. You've got Gabriel, who's now in the airport. We don't know who he is yet. Right. And then you've got the bomb, which Gabriel brings into the airport. It looks like it's a nuclear bomb. And so now Simon Pegg has to split off from Ving Rhames and stop being a part of the Overwatch support, now trying to defuse this bomb.
Right.
So lots of balls to juggle in the air.
Yeah.
Long story short, Grace gets away with the key.
Yes.
Gabriel gets away being undetected. The bomb was a fake, but Simon Pegg is able to defuse it, even though there's nothing in there. And then Ethan is just barely able to escape the IMF agents.
Ving Rhames and Simon Pegg flying off into different destinations. Everyone goes their separate way.
Everyone goes their separate ways, and then they all reconvene because we see where Grace is going. And somehow Ethan Hunt is able to beat her to Italy. The ending set piece of the first act, where we see
the car chase.
While she's detained, Tom Cruise comes in pretending to be her lawyer to take her away. She escapes yet again from him, and she leaves him in a really bad position. And we're going to get to this is one of the few reasons I actually couldn't stand her as a character.
Yeah.
I really liked that she was in this movie, and I really liked her personality as a foil to Ethan.
Yeah.
But I didn't like what this movie did with her. But we'll get there. There's a massive car chase. We're introduced to the bad guy's heavy, which in this case is Palm Clementif, right? Who we would have all last seen as Mantis in Guardians Volume 3. He escapes into a subway tunnel. A train almost runs him over, but they split up. The team finally meets up, including Ilsa this time. And then they escape. They reformulate a plan. They go into this fancy nightclub where everyone knows everyone's going to be. And the point of this nightclub is that Grace is supposed to bring the key. She's supposed to give it to the person who hired her. And we learned that the person who hired her is the White Widow, which is Vanessa Kirby, who we saw in the last movie. Of course, there's a fight sequence there. And then Gabriel shows up. Gabriel wants to buy the key. And we learned that Gabriel is actually the one who's working with the artificial intelligence, which they don't call the AI. I liked what they did. They call it the entity. I love that. Yeah. And so we learned that Gabriel's working for the entity. And then we also learned that Gabriel is this mysterious man from Ethan Hunt's past before he joined the IMF.
We've never been introduced to him before, though, right? This is all new.
So this is the second of 2 points that I'm going to make about this movie that I hated about this movie.
I'm ready. Okay? I'm
so
ready.
We'll get there.
Come on. Oh.
And then Gabriel says, I'll give you the option, Ethan. One of these two women is going to die. Either Grace is going to die or Ilsa is going to die. You choose. Ethan refuses to make that choice. And so he says to Vanessa Kirby's character, the White Widow, fine, you choose. Although I suggest you kill Ilsa because Grace is the one who knows where the key is. They go on this chase through the streets of Venice. I had lots of issues there. The entity, of course, infiltrates the satellite system, infiltrates the backup system, so Ving Rhames and Simon Pegg become ineffective.
Right.
Ilsa gets killed, unfortunately, by Gabriel because Gabriel was hoping that it would be her. That really pissed me off because, not for any plot reasons, but because I really like Rebecca Ferguson. And I think the fact that we just saw her in Silo, where I fell in love with her all over again, it was more of an emotional response to Rebecca Ferguson.
Let's slow down and let's unpack some of these things. And you need to take a breath because I know you're getting all worked up over Rebecca Ferguson.
Yeah.
Let's work backwards. First of all, it's always disheartening when a beloved character or a lead character dies.
Yes.
Right? And we are supposed to be very emotional and upset with a murder of Rebecca. I'm actually okay with it because I do think that the cast needed a little bit of a shakeup, especially if we're going to see another one. But my unhappiness, and maybe it matches up with yours, is that I didn't really find that she died in a very noble way.
Not at all.
It would have been much better if she would have died a little bit more heroically, saving Cruz, saving Benji, saving Grace. It would have been nice if she would have died a little bit more heroically, and it would have been like a really emotional moment. That's my problem with her death, is that it just seemed very...
She died because Grace was an asshole. I'm just going to go out and say it. She died because she was being stubborn and she was being an asshole. Like if she... You know what? Screw it. Let's get into this. All right. So this movie does two things that I absolutely hate. And it's been done 1,000 times before, and I can't stand it. The first thing it does is it introduces a sassy, wise-ass character who's clearly out of her depth, but then all of a sudden turns into like someone who's courageous and strong and is able to fight. She clearly becomes out of her depth, and she realizes she's out of her depth in Rome. In the airport scene, she's still that sassy, I'm a thief, I can get away from any bad trouble, no problem. But in Rome, you see her physically start to panic when she's almost running people over, escaping the police station in a car.
She doesn't want to drive the car.
She doesn't want to drive the car. You also see her personality as the type who's like, I will let other people die before I get caught and potentially go to jail. So much so that she handcuffs Ethan on a train track to a car and then runs away. No remorse, nothing.
Yeah, I thought that was really weak.
I thought that was so... And by the way, if that's how she was going to play it for the entire movie, that's absolutely fine. She seemed like this remorseless monster. And she then saw somebody die at the Abu Dhabi airport, and you see her panic about that. She's seen people shoot at her on the streets of Rome, and you see her panic about that. And then all of a sudden, she is ready to grab 2 knives and fight with Gabriel on this bridge in the middle of an empty Venice, that
No way.
really bothered me because like that is not something she would have done.
She doesn't have a dog in that fight. There's no reason.
Not. And so that's what I mean. That's why I got so pissed off with Ilsa dying, is because she died for basically a coward and for no reason.
Yeah, I agree.
That's the first thing this movie that I hate. The second thing is that this movie introduces us to a brand new character who's the bad guy, who's from the main character's life way in the past. I can't stand that trope.
Are you talking about Gabriel?
I'm talking about Gabriel.
Yeah.
Why are we supposed to have any emotional pull to who this guy is when all we see of him was that flashback and he kills that woman that Tom Cruise is seeing in the black and white flashback? We don't know who that woman is. We don't know who Gabriel is. It has no meaning to us. There's no emotional connect. That bothered me to no end. And you know what movie actually pulled that off reasonably well? Was hilariously enough, Pierce Brosnan's James Bond movie, the first one, GoldenEye, where we see Sean Bean, 006, partnering with James Bond for that very first mission in the dam. And then we see him die. And so he's just like, oh my God, I lost my friend. I lost my colleague. And then when he comes back as the main bad guy, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, what a double cross. Now, I'm not suggesting that this guy needs to be an ex-IMF agent or anything like that. Yeah. That's not the point. The point is that this is a guy from his past. We, the audience, have no emotional understanding who he is. I think it's a cheap way of trying to add an emotional baggage to a character. He could have just been the next door bad guy for all I care.
Yeah, I agree. I have to say, it wasn't so much that he was from Cruise's past. It was the fact that Cruise was a little bit of a troublemaker before he joined IMF. But here, it doesn't even show Cruise was a troublemaker. Like, it would have been different if they were doing like a drug deal and would have gone bad and Cruise's like friend or girlfriend or someone would have died. But this seemed like Batman, like just being gunned down in the streets of Gotham. And I have to say, knowing all of Cruise's like relationships, remember MI2, MI3?
Yeah.
I would reconstruct the Ethan Hunt character if he had a girlfriend who was shot. That would have dramatically, I think, changed my perception of him with Michelle Monaghan. I'm okay that this is someone from his past. I have a huge problem that the dude killed one of Cruise's girlfriend or something, because it doesn't explain at all how Cruise got into the IMF. It doesn't even show Cruise as a bad guy, to be honest. It would have been different if he was like, hey, I'm a small-time drug dealer. I did this thing, and like, you know, my girlfriend got killed in the drug deal. I agree with you. Adding Gabriel in that flashback doesn't do anything, and to me, it just raised a lot more questions that are unanswered about how Ethan Hunt, who he was before.
So 2 points. One, Gabriel could have just been another bad guy hired by the entity. No reason for him to be someone from his past.
It was enough.
The second thing is that, you know, that scene where they offer Grace the choice after Ilsa dies?
Yeah.
Look, I'm not saying these guys are all supposed to be saints. We don't know anything about the past lives of these IMF agents.
Yeah.
But you're telling me that all of them were bad guys at one point and were given the choice to become good guys and then work for the IMF? That didn't sit well with me.
It's not Suicide Squad.
This is not the Suicide Squad. That is exactly the same thought that was going on in my mind. I'm not saying these guys all have to be ex-colonels in the military or they need to be like SEALs or, you know, lawyers or, you know, good guys that were fighting for justice. That's not what I'm saying. But you're telling me that Benji was a bad guy before he became the hacker for the IMF, and that Ving Rhames was a bad guy, and all these guys, every one of them was a bad guy?
It changes the way that you look at everybody.
All of them.
By making that statement.
I can't look at Tom Cruise and Ethan Hunt and think, hey, you know what? He's a good guy. Yeah, he's a good guy. And then, by the way, that statement that he makes is like, I care about your life more than mine. I believe that 9 times out of 10, until you make that statement that I used to be a criminal before I became an
Yeah.
IMF agent.
Yeah.
Like that loses
Yeah.
a lot of the weight.
Yeah.
Because again, I don't expect these guys to be saints. But now that you're a part of the IMF, I get that you're willing to sacrifice yourself for the greater good. And the greater good could just be one other innocent person's life.
Yeah.
And that's important to me.
Yeah.
And again, maybe I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, but you're taking away from the heroic quality of an IMF agent by telling me that these guys were all criminals at one point.
The best case scenario is it's kind of like Scott in Ant-Man, right?
Yes. A bad guy who was not a bad guy. He was doing a bad thing for a good reason.
That's right. That's your best case scenario. But I agree. It makes you just think that all these guys were like really criminals and they were now Suicide Squad. So yeah, that the whole thing with Gabriel, I think really messed things up.
I get that you want to raise the emotional stakes because you're kind of marketing these as the last two Mission Impossible movies, which, by the way, I don't believe.
I don't believe.
Tom Cruise has gone on record to say he would like to continue making Mission Impossible movies until he's in his 80s.
That's a very Cruisian thing to say as well, right? I mean, that's his brand.
But my point is that if he's saying that now at 61 and he doesn't look 61, there's no way he's stopping after part 2. And especially because these movies are going to make a boatload of money. Someone is going to say at some point, all right, let's transition you and let's create a second character underneath you to become the next Tom Cruise.
Yeah. Okay, so this is one of my issues then. Haley Atwell was a good addition. I mean, we don't like her character, but I think that she's a good actress to be adding to this team.
Yeah.
I think they needed to add, like Jeremy Renner, they wrote out 2 movies ago, and maybe they'll get it with Shea Wiggum, because it kind of seems like they're setting it up for him to flip and to be now a good guy, right? And to say like, oh, I think Cruise is actually, onto something. He didn't go rogue.
His partner who first mentions that, and then he kind of realizes it when he gives him the gun back and says, this is more important than me at the moment.
So it could be that Shea Wiggum, Briggs, and Greg Tarzan Davis, it could be that those two kind of join IMF with Haley Atwell. That's not a bad team in the future, but it's also not like screaming summer blockbuster to me, Like I would say if you're really going to do that, you would probably want someone a little bit more high profile to come into that role, to then be like the torchbearer for, it's going to be this guy, Greg Tarzan Davis, Haley Atwell. Cruise is going to kind of be marginalized, but he'll still be, the Kittredge.
Yeah, he could be the director.
Something like that, and occasionally he gets his hands dirty. Maybe we'll see that in the second one, but in the first one, I didn't think they really set it up for like who the new team is going to be. Atwell, absolutely. But are we really dying to see another movie with Luther and Benji? Nah. Will it be Vanessa Kirby? Maybe. Paris is dead.
Speaking of which, so what did you think of Palm Clementiev's character?
If I were her, I would fire my agent. I would say, I'm a very, very beautiful woman. Why can't you get me a role where I can actually show my bloody face?
Yeah.
Why am I hired to drive a car in Rome? I'll get to Rome. And just make like these menacing like glares, like
and
I'm so
grunts,
bloodthirsty.
Literally grunting.
Like, come on, no one drives a car like that. They are intentionally emasculating women. There is nothing that stops a beautiful woman from being a very dedicated, great character, from being great at fighting, from being a good assassin or bounty hunter.
Look at Ilsa Faust.
Yes, but you don't have to be driving a car just like grunting like "Argh," and making all these like facial things like I just can't wait to hit all these motorcycles. It was a farce, and I would absolutely fire her agent and say, I'm beautiful. Give me a role where I can actually play a woman.
She was very meh as the heavy sidekick. The turn didn't make any sense to me. She looked like, I'm probably going to get flack for this, but she looked like a discount Harley Quinn from the comics, right? She had the white makeup on her face.
Yes.
She had the tattoo of the heart on her cheek.
Yes.
She looked exactly.
Yes, and they put her in this Music Man jacket. I agree. It was just
terrible copy of Harley Quinn. It was just terrible.
Why can't you just have someone who's like a bad guy? I mean, and good at fighting. You don't have to make them like mentally unstable. But anyway, I'm going to get away from Suicide Squad and get away from Harley Quinn. But yes, if I'm Palm Clementif, I would fire my agent. Be like, dude, I am beautiful. I am stunningly beautiful. I am funny. I can do action. Why is the best role that you can give me putting white makeup on my face, dressing like some conductor in a band with a sword, and then I die right away. And before I die, I give up all the secrets, kind of in French. So silly. Can I tell you about Rome?
Yes, please.
Having seen the nonsense of the Fast and Furious Rome chase, to any listener who's been to Rome, I can assure you there is a lot of traffic. These chases simply are non-existent. There is too much traffic. Having seen Fast 10, and then the best recreation that Indiana Jones could do, even though that was technically taking place in Tangier, right?
Yeah.
I have to say, this chase scene was a yawn for me. Maybe had I not seen those prior two movies, it would have been more interesting. But I have to say, almost exactly. They drove down the same stairs. Blah.
Let me ask you, because this is a comment I've written in my notes.
Yeah.
Is it just me, or did the action sequences in this movie, including the finale train action sequence, seem a bit bland?
I think the train was, well, the train cars falling down, I thought was fantastic.
Yeah.
Apart from that, I totally agree with you that the action was a bit meh.
I think the train falling section was the only thing that changed up the formula in this movie and for any train sequence.
I thought that was super cool.
I thought the Rome car chase sequence was 5 minutes to 10 minutes too long. I thought it was a little boring. I will admit, I thought it was funny that he got into the Fiat instead of the Aston Martin that was sitting right there. A clear homage to James Bond, by the way.
And I have to say, the one thing that struck me about that car chase scene was that there were three things that were kind of funny. And I never really remember Mission Impossible films having so much funniness. The first one was, apparently IMF didn't turn off his app, but he's got an app that finds cars. And yes, he gets into the little car, the Fiat. And then, of course, he had the thing where he's like, oh man, I've got to like orient myself. This is really hard to drive, right? And he kind of had like a few false starts in the car.
Yeah.
And then the third part was when, remember, they're going down the stairs and she's like, baby, baby, baby. And he turns and they roll over. And when they roll over, they actually swap seats. I thought that was funny. Actually,
I thought that was funny because they both look at each other like, how did this happen?
I have to say, the look that they caught on camera, that was fantastic acting. I don't know how many takes, but they both looked genuinely surprised. Like, that was brilliant acting. Yeah. But I have to say, that was three kind of funny parts in the one chase scene. But for me, the chase scene was exactly Fast X. I was...
The signature stunt I thought was very meh. And I think we got spoiled because of the stuff we've seen him do, like hanging off the side of a plane or climbing the Burj Khalifa. I thought this was, him on a motorcycle jumping off and then like diving onto a train. Honestly, I just thought that was very meh.
I totally agree with you, but I sent you a clip where there's like a behind the scenes of how he did it.
Yes.
If you watch the behind the scenes, it's actually much more impressive, especially if you watch the ramp that they built and how they actually got the footage. From a visual perspective, I give them a lot of credit. It is very, very good. But again, in terms of daredevilness, I was the same way, which is, to be honest, and I don't mean this literally, so don't everyone like at me, but I can drive a motorcycle off a cliff. And if I've got a parachute on me, I'll be okay. I'm not saying that there's no skill involved, but I think the skill was getting the shot perfect.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think the skill or the hard part was, I'm just going to drive off a cliff and don't worry, I've got a parachute. All I have to do is let go and rip the cord. Did not seem like the most daring stunt.
Exactly.
Especially because we find out that he drove off a ramp.
Yeah.
Not the most amazing.
Yeah, going back to the plot, the third act is pretty much entirely on this train, and the train is going to be the location where the exchange of the keys is meant to happen. The
Yeah.
White Widow is meant to take full possession of the keys there and then
Yep.
give it over to Gabriel.
Yeah.
For reasons unbeknownst to me, Gabriel has to sneak on inside what's effectively a coffin. I don't know why he couldn't just get on the train himself.
Totally
I
agree.
didn't understand that.
Just buy a ticket. You don't have to smuggle yourself in a.
I don't know why he had to get smuggled on that train.
Yeah.
I don't know why Palm Clementieff has to literally jump onto the top of the train.
Yeah.
Didn't make any sense, but fine. It is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
They get on the train. They do a little bit of their Mission Impossible shenanigans. Haley Atwell at this point is now almost firmly a member of the team. She's wearing a mask. She's posing as the White Widow. She negotiates settlement / peace with Kitteridge. And here's the first of two twists. One, we learned that Kitteridge was working with Black Widow after all this time. And the second twist is that the head of national intelligence for the U.S., played by Carrie Elwes,
Denlinger. Yeah. He played that role so well.
Was in cahoots with Gabriel from the get-go. And he's trying to work with Gabriel. But then here's the twist I didn't see coming. Gabriel kills him.
I didn't see that twist coming, but I guess that kind of makes sense if you're the entity, right? The entity doesn't want anybody to know.
Oh, touche. You're right. That in one line, you've automatically course corrected me. So well done. I didn't even think of that, but yes.
Yeah. But let's take that back a step further. I said at the outset, I love the entity. I love that storyline. I'm not as keen on exactly how Gabriel is engaged. It would be better if Gabriel believed that he were getting instructions from like, what is it, MI5?
Yeah, or a human
or
being
someone,
of some kind, right?
Yeah, like it would be better if he believed like, hey, this is all a big IMF plot or nonsense. I'm the one who's got to save the world. And he believed that he were getting like the accurate messages. But he seems to just have this deal with the computer, for the lack of a better word, where the computer's like, hey, I'll make you super rich. All you have to do is whatever I email you, right? Set your watch, do this, do that, follow my instructions directly, and I'll make you super rich because I'm going to wipe everybody else out. That seems like the deal that he's taken, right?
Or whatever the payoff is.
I don't really buy that deal, to be honest. I really think it would be better if Gabriel was similar to Shea Wingham. It would be better if there was like a US squad, Briggs and Degas, and let's say a British squad, Gabriel and someone else, and put 2 and 2 together. And there's 2 separate teams, the UK team, the US team, all trying to get Cruz. And they believe that Cruz is the rogue agent. They don't realize that they're taking instructions from a computer and actually unwittingly, supporting the entity's grand plan. That's more compelling to me because the idea of the misdirection, I think, is so strong. It's being underplayed a little bit because you can imagine like, hey, wait a second. I don't know where I got this instruction from. My entire business, right, which is counterintelligence, is not based on face-to-face meetings. I'm getting instructions. I'm getting the tapes that are self-destructing in 5 seconds. I'm trained to follow exactly what I'm getting. I have no idea. I cannot question. I have to follow exactly what I'm getting. It would be super cool if you saw like 3 different groups. Cruz and his people are one. Briggs is one. Gabriel is one. And they're all getting conflicting messages, and the entity's trying to basically get the other 2 to wipe out IMF and Cruz. That's compelling storyline to me. Not compelling, say, make Gabriel really nasty, self-interested, and whatever the computer tells him to do, he's like, yes, computer, I will do it.
Yeah, or maybe the computer has somehow got his family in a hostage situation.
Better. Then you can release this crazy backstory. So Briggs and Degas are like getting instructions, and Degas is like kind of, I don't know if this makes sense. And Briggs is like, we've got to follow the instructions, right? Yeah. And Gabriel and his partner are like, hey, our families are being held hostage. We've got to do this, otherwise they're going to die, right? More compelling, the stakes are higher.
let's talk about entity for a second.
Yeah.
So we as the audience understand that the key opens up this Dyson sphere or whatever it's called that contains the little like TI-85 calculator with red LEDs that contains the source code for this AI. And that whoever can control this TI-85 calculator will be able to control the source code and theoretically control the AI.
That's correct, but full stop right here. We should have a computer scientist guest, because just as you described it, my sense is that if this thing were really, really intelligent, it would obviously disseminate itself so that it's not housed.
Thank you, because that was exactly where I was going.
Right.
You've read my mind again.
Thank you.
What on earth?
We've been doing this for a while.
Yeah. If you are this super highly advanced entity and you already have the capability to communicate with others and you have access to satellite data and you have all this information at your hand and technology at your hand, which somehow at the bottom of the Bering Strait, this AI in a submersible still has, okay?
Right.
Why isn't it the first thing that it does is upload itself to a satellite that's orbiting Earth?
Totally agree.
And then that way, even if you destroy that little source code box, you no longer control it, because that's the whole point of digital. It's all a bunch of ones and zeros. You can get copied infinitely number of times. And man, does this sound Mission Impossible that the AI uploads itself to the International Space Station or to some other satellite.
100%. I was going to just say.
It destroys the submersible. It detonates all the torpedoes. So there's no more hard copy left. And the only hard copy left is on like this old chip that's up floating in space. Okay.
Yep.
And then now it becomes a race to either capture that satellite or sending up a rocket to destroy that satellite. And how does that not sound to you like a Mission Impossible or a James Bond movie?
You know what I was thinking? I was thinking, and maybe I'm inspired by For All Mankind. I was going to say there's a secret lunar base or something. The AI, sends himself to that base and Cruise has to go into space and he has to destroy it. Something like that. Fighting through all the different satellites that are aimed at
And I get that this goes probably beyond the remit of a classical Mission Impossible movie.
Yeah.
This starts to get more into the Fast and the Furious / James Bond territory. And that too, the James Bond territory of old, not the Daniel Craig era.
Right.
Right. We're talking about the Roger Moore, Sean Connery era, right? Where they were not afraid to send people to space.
Yep.
For a movie purpose. Again, I'm not saying that we're at an inflection point with Mission Impossible, but at some point you need to up the game. To their credit, even though it's ridiculous, even Fast and the Furious understood that, to the point that they went to space in the last movie before Fast X. I don't necessarily agree that that's what the movie franchise needs, because that really does become like a jumping the shark moment. But at the same time, I do believe that it could become a race to send a rocket, blow up a satellite from Earth. I think that's still plausible for a Mission Impossible movie. You don't need to send Tom Cruise up into space, although he would love to do that. That could be the perfect stunt for him.
I agree.
Do a spacewalk? How much would he love to do that?
I agree. Where he's tethered to something. Remember when we watched For All Mankind, that kid, I can't remember his name, he did the spacewalk on the hotel. And he had to go out and he had to
Yes, that's right.
I feel like Cruise would do something like that, where they're like, we can't get in there. He's like, tether me and then swing me around. I'll get it. And then I'll whip around and I'll come back and hit the dock perfectly.
And you remember Felix Baumgartner or whatever his name was? Who did the skydive for Red Bull?
Yes.
That would be perfect for Tom Cruise to be like.
And then he does a re-entry. He's like, I missed the ship. I'm just going to have to do a hard re-entry, right? And they're like, you'll burn up. And he really does it in real life.
Yeah.
That is
a quintessential Tom Cruise thing to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessitate the use of CGI in the sense that you're
Yeah.
going into space to film an action sequence.
That's right.
That can all be done here on Earth, but he gets to do a skydive, and that becomes the signature stunt of whatever this movie could have been.
Yes. So I have to say, the thing about this story that I think has legs, the second episode, I feel is going to have a lot of underwater, which I'm not really excited about.
Yeah.
But I feel like at the end of Dead Reckoning Part 2, there's going to be, you know how like when you kill a robot and you think it's dead, and then right before the credits roll,
you hear the sound effect.
Or that red LED like blips
like
again,
hell.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like that's how this is going to end. And I'm okay with that because I feel like the next kind of few Mission Impossibles can all be dealing with this rogue AI that's a little bit crippled and weakened, but it's still trying to self-preserve and cause havoc. All storylines I can actually get behind if we're talking about what are the next like 2 or 3. I'm okay with that, I have to say.
I would say that, look, this is 2 movies with the AI.
Mm-hmm.
I could see maybe 1 more, and that's it. I wouldn't want to see it drag on to more than that.
What else do we have to say about this? I felt like there were 2 devices that I noticed. One, when we see Cruise kind of in that meeting, right, where he's got the mask of Kittredge, right? And he throws like the green smoke. I thought that was cool, but I thought it was very Michael Bay to have the smoke green.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I picked up was that scene in kind of the disco with White Widow. That was very John Wickian, I thought.
I was just about to say that. It's so funny because the Italians know how to throw underground raves. So good.
And then I have one more thing about the train. So the train scene, so interesting Hollywood does this. We saw a huge train scene just with Indiana Jones, right?
Yeah.
So that took a little bit of the excitement out of it. But I thought the train cars falling was fantastic. I thought that was very realistic. Like in my own head, it's realistic. And I thought it was cool how they're kind of climbing up one by one, and it took them like 3 or 4 to reach safety. But then the fact that he jumped alone, right? They made this big thing about how he's got like an air wing. And the fact that he jumped alone without grace, I thought was really weird. It's like, oh, this can only hold one person.
Okay.
One, it didn't seem to be the case, right? Like, she could have like jumped on him and could have like descended like very fast. It could have been like a bumpy landing, but it seems very strange knowing everything you know about Cruise, right? I care about you more than I care about me. My parachute only holds one person. I guess you'll just stay and I'll escape. I was really disappointed by that.
Maybe. I thought it was fine because I think the understanding always was, and the plan always was, that she was going to go to Kittredge and seek refuge with Kittredge. So I thought that was fine. It didn't do anything. I get what you're saying. I totally get what you're saying because you're right. It's a little odd that he went through all that just to leave her there. But I think it was also a little bit of character growth on her part to be like the one who's saying, no, you go on your own. Don't worry about me. The old Grace wouldn't have done that.
But then you should do the trope where she like pulls the cord and the wind sucks him out. Or she should like kick him, like something to like force him out, you know?
Yeah.
I thought that was really un-Ethan Hunt to be like, oh, this only holds one. You're out of luck. You'll be fine. It just goes against everything that I thought was Hunt, right? He's a daredevil. He would never say this only has a capacity of 1. It would be her to say like, is this going to hold us? And he's like, probably not.
Maybe.
Anyway, I thought that was not great. But then the ending, again, just to wrap it up, so he lands, he's with Benji. And my first thought was like, how is that computer not doing a self-driving car? Because we see Benji engage like the auto.
Oh my God, good point. Why isn't the entity going after Benji in that car?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's great. I didn't even think of that either. That's a great point.
Benji puts the autopilot on. I thought that's where Benji dies.
Yeah.
Now Benji's out of it. The car is going to take over. Like Cruz is going to get to the mountain and be like, okay, Benji, now what? And Benji's gone and you just see him like overturned, like the car swerves and hits like head on a mountain. Benji's dead. And Cruz is like, Benji, now what? Now what? wait, I'm at the top. Now what? And he's like, okay, I guess I got to do this, right? I thought that's how that was going to end, and that was going to be the end of Benji. All right. Do we have anything else on Mission: Impossible Dead Reckoning parenthesis part 1 close parenthesis full stop question mark?
That's it for me. What's your rating? How did you feel about this movie?
For me, it's a must see. You've got to see it in the cinema. I love the story. I've been going on and on and on about the story. I love some of the set pieces. I thought that there was a good amount of humor. It's not a perfect movie. It's not a perfect Mission Impossible movie, but I felt like when I left, I was happy I went. And I compare that to how I felt when I saw Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones, like, I just couldn't wait for it to end. Like, just come on, I just want to go home.
Yeah.
End it already, right? Mission Impossible, I was genuinely like, the train cars, it was amazing, you know? And I was just waiting for something else. When it ended, I was like, immediately, like, if I could go book part 2 and stay and watch part 2, 100% I would.
Yeah.
Definitely, I would have stayed another 3 hours if there was a part 2 immediately back to back. So yeah. I give it a must see it in cinemas.
Okay. I think the movie straddles the line between a wait for streaming and a watch it in cinema. Very similar to what Fast X did, but Fast X, I recognized, was also like a movie about spectacle, which is why you have to see it on the big screen.
Yeah.
This movie is a little bit about the spectacle, but it's also an enjoyable action movie. Forget about the idiosyncrasies of the plot. There's a couple of plot holes that, you and I have already pointed out. There's a couple things I think this movie could have done better. I still think it's a crime and somebody should go to jail for what they did to Rebecca Ferguson's character. But having said all of that, I give it the benefit of the doubt, and I strongly suggest that you should watch this in cinemas as well.
All right. We are aligned once again.
Yeah.
A little bit in the intensity, we're differing, but we are aligned.
If you asked me last week, I would have said, I think this is going to be the movie that saves the blockbuster cinema for summer of 23. I'm not 100% sure it's going to do that this summer for a variety of reasons, not least withstanding its immense budget. Yeah. But I still think that this is going to be the number 1 movie of the summer based on this. I think a lot of people are going to be very happy with it. I think the timeliness of the AI plot point, they hit the nail on the head there, or the timing was perfect. So yeah, I really hope that it does very well, and I expect it will.
That is Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Pete, if people want to agree, disagree, offer their comments, find any other plot holes, what are our details? Where can they find us?
That's right. So your mission, listeners, if you choose to accept it, is to like this video, leave a comment, subscribe to our channel. You can always tweet at us at F&S Podcast on Twitter. You can DM us on Instagram at Films and Stuff Podcast, or you can email us aloha@filmsandstuffpodcast.com. This podcast will not self-destruct after 5 seconds.
That's right. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. It was a longer episode, but definitely worthwhile. Mission Impossible Part 1, fantastic. I really, really cannot wait for Part 2. Pete, thank you as always.
My pleasure, Ethan. Thank you.
We'll see you next time on Films and Stuff. Thanks, everyone. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.